Hello and welcome to NewsBharati. In this video, we are going to talk about Russia's rationale behind Ukrainian invasion as well as NATO and West's possible or probable response to this invasion. Now, let's start with what Vladimir Putin, Russian president, has said. He basically gave two main reasons behind this invasion, two main rationales behind this invasion. Firstly, he claimed that there is no such thing as Ukrainian nationality. He basically said that the eastern Ukraine, the current eastern Ukraine, is a region given by Russians, which was Russian region, which was given by rulers at that time, Vladimir Lenin, Khrushchev, etc., to Ukraine because they were weak leaders, quote unquote weak leaders. He also said that in the same time period during Soviet Union, some part of Hungary and some part of Poland, especially like the city of Lviv, this region was attached to Ukraine because it was all part of Soviet Union. And then when Soviet Union collapsed, this big country called Ukraine emerged. But there is no such thing as Ukrainian nationality. This is his claim. I am not supporting it, I am not denying it. I am just telling you what he said. His second claim is that there is, and I am not using my words, I am telling you what he said. He used the word genocide. He said there is genocide going on the Russian speaking population and the Russian population within Ukraine. He used this word. He said we want to demilitarize and denazify Ukraine. Because of these reasons, he is basically saying that we are invading Ukraine. So this is the rationale. But there is one more thing which he did not specify in his speech, which is about NATO membership, specifically Ukrainian NATO membership or the possibility of it. So there was this 2008 agreement which talked about possibility of Ukraine joining NATO, as well as there was an older Budapest agreement which talked about Ukraine remaining a neutral country. That 2008 agreement basically made that Budapest agreement invalid, because of which Putin and obviously Russia was angry at the West that you did not stand to your word when we agreed to dissolve Soviet Union and made Ukraine an independent country. You assured us that NATO will not expand towards east. But since then, Poland is part of NATO, all the Baltic countries are part of NATO, NATO invaded the Czechoslovakia, Slovakia, and basically made an independent, they created an independent country of Kosovo. Of course, there was genocide happening, but that doesn't give a right to NATO to invade any country and create any country. He also talked about Russia, he did not talk about it, but there was this assumption and presumption about a rationale behind US and UK invading Iraq in 2003 without, it was basically an illegal invasion because UN did not approve of it. Because of all of these reasons, he is saying that there is nothing wrong with we invading our fellow Russian country, because he, again as I said, he doesn't consider Ukraine as a separate nationality. He is saying that it's a fake nationality. Now, let's come to the side of what US, UK, general West's response would be. There is this famous professor in Chicago University whose name is Professor John Mearsheimer. So John Mearsheimer said this back in 2014 when actually, forget about Joe Biden, but even Donald Trump wasn't even the US president. At that time, he said that all the Western leaders, remember this is in 2014 when there was Angela Merkel, there was David Cameron, there was Barack Obama, assumed to be stalwart statesmen, stateswomen of that era. At that time, he said all the Western leaders are 21st century leaders, while Putin is a 20th century guy. He will think on terms of geopolitics. He will capture Crimea. This was just after Putin captured Crimea. He will capture Crimea. He will take as much as he can from Ukraine because he is a 20th century guy and he thinks in terms of 20th century, in terms of geopolitics and in terms of realpolitik. He said that in 2014. Now, will West respond? Already NATO chief and US president has already declared that they will not send a single NATO troop on ground in Ukraine in order to defend Ukraine. So that is very clear. But I don't know how many of you have seen it, but there is this famous old BBC mini-series called Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. In that Yes Prime Minister, there was this one famous scene when Austrian scientist has an interaction with Prime Minister Hacker, fictional character in that series, where he talks about what is the red line, what is the line on sand, when would you press the nuclear button? Because he explains to him that there is no limit to where you can tolerate then Soviet invasion and incursion. He said, would you press the button, the nuclear button, if Russia invades Berlin, if it invades Paris, if it crosses the English Channel, if it's inside London, then for all these questions, Prime Minister Hacker says, no, I won't press the button just because he is capturing some other country. So he finally asked him a very rhetorical and sarcastic question that when would you press the button? When Russian forces are around the Piccadilly Circus, which is the main circle in London. That is exactly the situation in West right now. When will NATO and US act? Will they act when Ukraine is falling? No, clearly no. Will they act when Estonia and other Baltic countries, they will fall? Perhaps no. Poland? Perhaps no. Romania? Perhaps no. Hungary? Perhaps no. Then what is the button? That is an age-old question which everybody in the West is thinking about. Will the West act? And there is one more last point about West response to it or possible response to it. Foolish policies by Germany about nuclear power. Germany itself, they decided that we do not want nuclear power plants because of green activists, and they decided that we don't need nuclear power plants, so they sort of closed down their ongoing nuclear power plants at that time from 2005. Now their dependence on Russia for natural gas is so much that they cannot afford to go against Russia, and that is the level of dependence the biggest economy, most powerful country in EU, that is Germany, is so much dependent on Russia that they cannot take any decision against Russia. And that is the reality of West's response to Russia and Russian incursion in Ukraine, Russian invasion of Ukraine. So that is the scenario. In next video, we will talk about all of this situation happening in Ukraine and its impact on India. So do watch that video for that information. Thank you.